The workforce is living in dread, worried that AI or artificial intelligence will make humans obsolete. Well, joining us to take a deeper dive is Bharat Ramamurti, author of the Bully Pulpit. He's also the former deputy director for the Biden administration's White House National Economic Council. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
So I want to hear what your book explores, but just speaking anecdotally, I've come across so many people who are so fearful that their jobs, which run the gamut, are worried that AI is going to replace them. How much of a reality is this?
I think that people have a right to be concerned about this. If you look at a variety of projections about AI-related job loss, you see that on average, we're talking about something between 10 to 15 million American jobs lost to AI. And as you said, it spans a variety of fields. It's not just people working on the factory floor like we saw during previous rounds of automation. Everything from call center workers to accountants, consultants, people working in white collar fields are pretty exposed to these types of job losses. And beyond that, a lot of people's jobs are going to change, where the nature of their day-to-day tasks is going to be very different because of the way that AI is incorporated into the workday.
Can you get a little bit more granular, a little bit more specific as to what some of those jobs are? Maybe split the difference between a more blue-collar job versus a more white-collar job that is threatened by AI.
Sure. So a field like accounting, for example, where you could see AI being able to execute 75, 80%, 90% of what folks in that field tend to do is very exposed to it. Call center workers, you're already starting to see AI chatbots replace the person you call up on the phone, and you're going to see that trend likely to accelerate over the next several years. But even sort of more technical fields like finance, consulting, a lot of that type of work can be replicated at this point fairly well by AI. And of course, the projections are that that technology will improve such that you can significantly reduce your workforce while still getting the same type of output if you're a company.
So what does this do to the economy? Because if you have less buying power amongst most Americans, it's really just going to be the top tier, the most wealthy Americans who can afford anything. So what is this going to do for the average household?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what my writing has been about. We need actual new rule changes to make sure that if we do see this economy-wide boost in productivity and economic growth from AI, how are we going to make sure that working people are cut in on that for once? If you look at what's happened over the last 20 or 25 years, when there's these types of technological improvements, and those gains tend to go to the folks in the top 1%, top 0.1%, rather than being broadly shared. So we got to make sure that there are potentially new taxes on the companies that then fund support directly for the people who lose their jobs, people in fields like elder care, child care, where we know that AI can't replace them, but where the wages are really low, and we need to make sure that people are working in those fields given the needs of the economy. We also need to make sure that we find ways of empowering workers. We'd love to see ways that workers can have more say in how AI is used in their workplace, which is something that we don't have a lot of tools for right now in the United States.
Absolutely. Well, and not every industry is unionized. I know that we recently experienced SAG-AFTRA in the entertainment industry come to blows with the networks and the other various companies that they depend on jobs as writers and so forth, because those companies were entertaining the idea of using AI to write scripts. So to get ahead of the curve and to make yourself indispensable, do you have any advice for people on how you could possibly even do this?
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be a number of things. Number one, as you said, a union is very powerful. The Hollywood writers were able to protect their creative work through the union negotiations that they had, but only 6% of private sector workers in the United States are unionized. Beyond that, I think learning how to use AI, as somebody once said to me, the key here isn't that people aren't going to learn how, people won't be able to use AI. The key is that people are going to have to be better at using AI compared to the other people that they work with.
Yeah.
And it's, that the old thing about you don't have to outrun the bear, you have to outrun the guy next to you.
Sure.
And I think that that's really the key, learning how to use AI prompts, figuring out how to use the output from AI and turn it into something that's accessible to a client or a customer. Those are the types of skills that are going to be in demand. And finally, like I said, there are going to be certain fields that aren't really exposed to AI. Education, home health care, elder care, child care. those are fields where we're going to need more people working. And so if you're looking to the future about the types of jobs that you or your children want to do, those are areas that you should explore.
And you had mentioned earlier just having more agency over how AI is used in the workplace as an employee. Well, could there ever be legislation or laws in place that essentially makes AI illegal to replace human beings when it comes to producing something or implementing a particular service or product?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're already starting to see those types of laws at the state level. Certain states, like Indiana, for example, are entertaining laws that would say that you can't have AI truck driving. Every commercial truck needs to be driven by an actual human being, and that's obviously, driven in part by truck drivers in those states saying these are important jobs, and there's other important considerations here that go just beyond the bottom line for this truck driving company. I think you're likely to see that in other areas. We see it in criminal justice. You can't use AI for facial recognition, can't use it in the courtroom, and so on. I think that without rules that make sure that workers get cut in on the benefits,
Sure.
the alternative is that you're going to see a lot of these laws that just say ban AI outright.
Yeah, I guess there's a delicate balance to be struck. Well, Bharat Ramamurti, author of The Bully Pulpit, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
We'll be back in 2 minutes.